Sir, to begin with, I was listening to you talk upstairs. Could you please comment on the current status of rural electrification for us?
Rural electrification in India moved quite smoothly till about 1971. And what are the more developed states completed rural electrification in the early 70s. But the model of rural electrification was one where the electricity boards did the work through credit and through their internal savings. Thereafter, the electricity boards in India started experiencing financial difficulties and found it difficult to get the resources for extending electrification into the rural areas. So the next 2-3 decades we had this dichotomy that the northern, western and southern states were fully electrified and the weaker states of UP, Bihar, Bengal, Orissa, Assam, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh were more or less unelectrified. So out of 600,000 odd villages, over 100,000 remained unelectrified till 2004-05. Then the government of India took the major decision to start the Rajiv Gandhi Gramin Vidyutikaran Yojana and said that they would provide 90% grant for completing rural electrification. And that worked wonders, and so the last 6 years or so, over 100,000 villages have been electrified. And the grid has now covered all villages except scattered hamlets and remote settlements. Now the latest NSSO survey of December shows that 80% of rural households have access to electricity. Now this is a dramatic improvement of about 58% shown in the 2011 census.
So, and this is how it was envisaged when you conceived?
And a huge improvement on 44-45% of the 2001 census.
Okay.
So I think in terms of access, we've had a breakthrough. But we have not yet had the breakthrough and we need work to do to see that these households get electricity at least in the evening peak hours so the children can study and the ladies can watch television. That is yet to happen, but my own belief is the next few years it will happen.
So that brings me to my next question. What are the plans for the future? How do you see rural electrification being planned, as you say, in the future, over say the next decade?
My sense is that as the overall supply position improves, rural settlements would get access for longer hours. So even in India today, there are states which give 24 hours electricity to villages, and my sense is that will gradually spread to the less developed states over the next 4 or 5 years.
Okay, sir. And how do we plan on doing this? Through extending the grid?
The grid is already there, so all that is required is a little more extension work in giving legal connections to all households.
Okay.
Because many households have access without legal connections. So we give legal connections, we put meters to those who can afford to pay and get them to pay what their counterparts in urban areas pay and give them 24/7 electricity. This has happened in some states, it's happening in others. My sense is in the next 4 or 5 years this will happen.
Okay. Sir, and in your opinion, sir, has there been a match in the objectives and implementation of RGGVY?
The only area where we have not yet made a breakthrough is that it was envisaged that there will be decentralized management of the village grid.
Okay.
Which will be done either by the panchayat or by a franchisee or some society. Now their progress has been very weak. So it is still a centralized bureaucratic organization that does the maintenance and management. And so obviously the quality of service in terms of repair and addressing faults, in giving new connections, in metering, billing, all that is still a long way from where it should be.
Okay. So finally, this decentralized community-owned power plants is catching up with regards to renewable microgrids and mini grids are coming up. Could you please comment on that, sir?
That is the low-hanging fruit of the coming decade, because if you look at any village, you have cow dung. Now, if cow dung is converted to modern commercial energy, you get 3 times the useful energy that you get today when it is baked into a cake and used for cooking. Similarly, every village has crop residues. Now, again, in many fields it is burnt in India. Now, if you use that for converting to useful commercial energy, for electricity through, say, gasifiers, you get 3 times more energy, and you get it in a modern usable way, for lighting, for watching television, for charging phones or using computers. And if you combine this with some local level storage at the village level, then you can store it for use in evening peak hours when demand is higher. And when you can provide full evening peak load, you transform the quality of all households, of the life in all households, especially for the young. Access to television, access to computers, access to a fan, access to lighting. And I do believe that it is also possible then to afford the subsidy to provide LPG cylinders to households in villages at a price that they can afford to pay. And if that happens, then in the next 10 years, we can look forward to clean energy access to all village households. This is not yet on the table. I hope it becomes a national policy goal, and I hope we go around implementing it vigorously.
I hope.
And its implementation will be easier and affordable if we can mainstream the conversion of bioenergy at the village level into useful modern commercial energy.